Today we are going to practice the application of scientific method. As of now, we know that there are 6 important steps of scientific method. We would apply them one by one in a sequence in a realistic example. Recall those steps. First one, problem or question. Second one, research. Third one, hypothesis. Fourth one, experiment. Fifth one, observation and analysis or analysis. And sixth one, result and conclusion. Ready? Let's start. Let's put our knowledge of the scientific method to a realistic example that includes some of the terms you will be needing to use and understand. Keep a notebook and a pen handy so that you can take notes if you need to. What's the problem of John? What happens? John watches his grandmother bake bread. He asks his grandmother, what makes the bread rise? You know, when flour is baked, it rises as a result of fermentation. So his grandmother explained that yeast releases a gas as it feeds on sugar. Let's rephrase the problem John came up with. John wonders if the amount of sugar used in the recipe will affect the size of the bread loaf. John researches the areas of baking and fermentation and tries to come up with a way to test his questions and hypothesis. Here, questions means hypothesis, which he would test by conducting an experiment. John came up with a hypothesis. I hope you still remember hypothesis is a testable statement which always contains if and then. After talking with his teacher and conducting further research, John comes up with a hypothesis. What is his hypothesis? If more sugar is added, then the bread will rise higher. John is getting ready to conduct his experiment. And for the experiment, we need what? Variables. Do you remember how many types of variables are there? First one, independent variable. Independent variable are the variables which you can change, which one can change. Independent variable. What is independent variable in this case? John decided to start with 25 gram sugar, then 50 gram sugar, then 100 gram, then 250 gram, then 500 gram. You see, he can change the amount of sugar. He can make 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, whatever he can make because he has a control. This is independent variable. What is other types of variable? Yes, dependent variable. Dependent variable is the one John cannot change, but that variable depends on this independent variable, on this amount of sugar. What is that dependent variable? What he wants to see? The size of the loaf of bread, size of the bread loaf. Size of the bread loaf depends on the amount of sugar. And in every experiment, we always have another group, which is called what? Control group. So John has already observed that his grandmother always uses 50 gram of sugar. John is conducting his experiment and compare his result with his grandmother's bread loaf. So control group is 50 gram of sugar, which his grandmother always bakes the bread. There is another group, remember, which will not change, which would stay the same in all trials, in all steps of the experiment. What is that? Constants. What are constants? They would stay same. Number one, all other ingredients, water, flowers, or if there is something else he is adding. Brand of ingredients, the same brand for the flour, same brand of for sugar. Rise time, like how long you leave bread in the oven, you will not change it. Temperature, humidity, where the bread is rising, because he is conducting his experiment in the same area where his grandmother does. Types of pan used, is not going to change the pans. And oven is the same oven his grandmother uses. And cooking time. These are constants. Okay, so far so good. Now experiment is started. But for the experiment, what we need? Before we start experiment, we need to have what? That's what John is going to. John writes out his materials and procedure for his experiment in his journal. And he decided that he is going to test each sugar variable 3 times. 25 gram sugar 3 times, 50 gram of sugar 3 times, 100 gram 3 times. Okay? And before that, to note down his observation and data, what he needs. John comes up with a table so that he can record his data. John gets all of his material together and carries out his experiment. What type of table he has drawn, he has made? Let's see. This is the table for observation and analysis. First column, amount of sugar he is using. He used 25 gram, 50 gram, 100 gram, 250 gram, 500. And then 3 trials for each amount of sugar. 25 gram, first trial, second trial, third trial. 50 gram, 1, 2, 3. And you got 3 numbers, add them up, divide by 3, you get average size. So 25 gram of sugar is giving average size of bread loaf 756 centimeter. 100 gram, the size of bread loaf is 1116 cubic centimeter. 250 gram of sugar, he got the size 612. 500 gram of sugar gave the average of 432. See these 3 numbers. 50 gram is the control group. His grandmother bakes her bread with this amount of sugar. And her mother's baked bread loaf size is 1260. Okay, look at it. What do you notice? That after 50 gram of sugar, the size starts increasing or decreasing. 50 to 100, 1260 to it went down 1116. 250 went down, further decreased. Right? What are you going to do now? John examines his data and notices that his control group worked the best in his experiment. but not significantly better than 100 gram of sugar. 100 gram is still not bad, but 50 gram was the biggest, the largest size. John rejects his hypothesis. Why? Because the size of the bread loaf is not increasing, but decides to retest using sugar amounts between 50 gram and 100 gram. 50 gram is a control group, 100 gram he is trying now. And what happens now? Now 50 gram giving 1344, 60, 1380, 70, 1612, 80, 1332, 90, 1084. So again here you see which one is giving you the largest size of the bread loaf. John finds that 70 gram of sugar produces the largest loaf. See here, 70 is 1612. 70 gram of sugar gives 1612. 50, his grandmother's, control group 1344. 60 gram gets bigger, 1344 increased to 1380. 70 increased to 1612. 80 again going down, 1332, 1084. So 70 gram of sugar gives the good size, not the good size, largest size. John finds that 70 gram of sugar produces the largest loaf. That is his conclusion. So his result is what? If we use 70 gram of sugar, we can bake, we can make, we can produce the largest loaf. So that's where John ended his experiment and concluded. Now he will write the whole lab report and will type it up and submit to his teacher, and also he would present in the group of his friends, his classmates, and he would explain all steps by steps. That is called communication. So this is the real life example of application of scientific method. That's all for the day. Thank you so much. Wish you a happy day. Bye now.